I'm glad to see a full room this morning for the Secretary's comments. And I really want to thank the Secretary whose plane was canceled at 2 a.m. this morning for being insistent upon being with you here this morning to provide comments. So I'm going to hand it over to her because she's really the one that you want to hear from, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. But again, thank you, Madam Secretary, we appreciate you being insistent to talk to the crowd. Thank you so much, and we're going to hand it to you.
Great. Well, what a joy to be with you all. I'm just heartbroken I'm not there in person. Seth did, by the way, amazing Seth. Thank you so much for your leadership, Seth. It's inspiring every day for me, 14 days on the job. But yes, at 1:48 this morning, our plane was still sitting on the runway on its way to DC, and it just couldn't get us there in time. So I insisted on joining you this way. I know it's not ideal, but really, really important to me to be a part of this amazing event. I think this might set to be the 101st Ag Outlook Forum. So we are standing literally on the shoulders of giants today. I can't see you. Hopefully you can see me. But I think my friend Governor Jim Pillen is in the audience, and he really represents, I think, the best of us, and his work as a governor, as a fourth-generation ag producer, and as a veterinarian. I have really relied on him, especially recently. But again, what an honor to be with you all this morning at the 101st Ag Outlook Forum. What an amazing gathering of producers and innovators and industry leaders and dignitaries from all over the world. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you and the farmers and industries that you represent over these next 4 years. Obviously, the work you do is extremely close to my heart. Agriculture and ranching and row cropping in my mom's home state of Minnesota have formed the foundation of my own work and my worldview since the very beginning. My roots are in a tiny Texas town. You'll hear me in the next 4 years talk a lot about rural prosperity, and I think the importance of that in sustaining this incredible country. In fact, just yesterday, I was at a livestock show, and my senior in high school, Jake, won his lightweight shorthorn class, so it was a big day in the Rollins family. He's headed off to Texas A&M to study agriculture and hopefully become a big animal vet. So this runs really deep with us for generations, and again, what an honor to have accepted this post and have been confirmed and sworn in just 2 weeks ago. Listen, your work is vital to our nation, not only because it helps feed and fuel America and the world, but because it represents a way of life. And we all know that that way of life is indispensable to the American experiment. I believe, and have said multiples of times, especially recently, that the same thing our founders did, that farming is essential to the American occupation, and that without it, we do not have a republic. In fact, our revolution was fought all those years ago, 250 years ago, by a bunch of farmers. And I think that we should never let that go. And it is in that light that what you do is not just supporting our farmers and our ranchers, it really is sustaining our nation and preserving freedom around the world. Because agriculture is the foundation of America, we have an obligation to be candid with ourselves and with the American people about where we are today. The state of our agriculture economy is dire, perhaps one of the worst in the last 100 years. Our trade deficit is set to hit a record $45.5 billion this year, our deficit. There has been a rapid decline in the number of American farms. And again, I'm sure you've all talked about this and has been part of the conversation and will continue to be, but 1 in 10 farms have disappeared in the past decade. The cost of production is up by nearly 30% in the past year alone. And the average age of the American farmer is 58 years old. For those of us in our 50s, that doesn't sound too old anymore, does it, Governor Pillen? But it is not realistic to sustain a healthy and robust industry that is a necessity to the future of our country with an aging leadership. And so what can we do over the next few years and hopefully many years beyond to change that trend? We've got some big ideas you'll be hearing from me in the coming months, in the coming year. Listen, we've already started the critical work to begin to turn this around. my boss, Donald Trump, whom I have worked alongside and known now for 8 years, in the first White House and then building the America First Policy Institute, and now in this role in his cabinet, will expect no less and has little patience for anything other than success very quickly. We're committing to getting a fair deal for American agriculture in trade. As you know, this is a top priority for this White House, and we're going to get it done. I know that many in our industry are concerned, and rightly so, about the effect of tariffs on American farmers. But I want you to know that your concerns are heard and that I will always be, always your greatest champion, second only to President Trump. We're making great progress in getting the $30 billion in disaster and emergency relief out the door. I know there have been a lot of questions about that recently. The last thing our ag producers need is to have to wait again and again and again on the federal government. So my commitment, even though we're only 14 days in, is that we are hopefully moving at light speed. We call it Trump speed, and we'll hopefully get that out very, very quickly. The Congress gave us a deadline of March 21st. We've already got the process in place and are moving. Hopefully we are able to beat that deadline. And as we all know, the biggest challenge right now facing at least a lot of our producers is the avian flu. Through this challenge wasn't created, although this challenge wasn't created under our watch, it's really became extremely dire a couple of years ago with avian flu. It certainly has not let up in recent months in the last year. And earlier this week, I rolled out a pretty significant plan on how to attack it. I don't want to spend time here going through it because I'm guessing a lot of you have probably seen it, but it is a 5-pronged approach and includes obviously repopulation, includes biosecurity, includes importing for the short term regarding the cost of eggs, and includes some significant funding for additional research. A good friend of mine in a recent roundtable with the governors who were all in town last week said the virus always wins. And so what we've got to do is ensure that we're moving forward with the most efficient and effective ideas and thoughts in mind, not just with vaccines, but with also therapeutics and potentially other work we can do regarding immunity and rebuilding these herds. So we are on it, and we are looking at an across the government approach to get it done. And I want to leave a little bit of time for some questions, Seth, too, but I think that as we're kind of moving into this today and for really the future, and as we all work together, I'll be in Denver on Sunday with many of you. We'll be in Georgia at the end of next week, but I'm sure some of you that are in this room, and clearly I am moving quickly and out across the country. We'll be in Nebraska and Iowa soon, and hope to hit all the states very, very quickly. But we're getting a lot of feedback from all of you, and that's really, really important to me. I'll obviously be in Washington quite a bit, but my plan is to be out with all of you in the country, perhaps even more than I'm in Washington. As I mentioned at the top of the call, I think that at the top of the speech, I think it's really important that we look at an all of the above approach, and certainly talking about the importance of rural America and how we can craft and execute a comprehensive agenda for that most important part of our country. One of the cruel ironies of the past century is that as American agriculture has gotten more efficient and more able to feed the nation and the world, the small town and rural communities that sustain it have fallen into decline. We must reverse this trend. I've already begun talking across the cabinet and in fact to our president and vice president about a long-term plan on what that looks like, not just 4 years, although we'll be moving very quickly in the next 4 years, but next 8, 12, 20, and 50 years, that the importance of reversing that trend couldn't be understated or overstated, because the vision of an America as farmland to factory that is devoid of soul and meaning to the people who gave it both. And I tell you, this daughter of Glen Rose, Texas, population 2,000, will do everything I can to help lead the way to reverse that as well. It also means that working, as I mentioned, across the cabinet, whether that is with Secretary Turner in housing on bringing more housing back to rural America, Secretary Kennedy in Health and Human Services on bringing more hospitals and medical care out into those rural communities, and obviously making America healthy again, which has become a big part of President Trump's vision in the last year, and really education, et cetera, just having that all of government approach, having the partners on the ground and our governors, our ag commissioners, our lieutenant governors, talking about the vaccine, our state veterinarians, and for all of you that are there representing the different parts of the ag community, working alongside all of you to bring, again, real opportunity back to rural America. Listen, American agriculture began 4 centuries ago when neighbors born across an ocean came together in a new world to clear the fields, to build the homes, and to plant crops on the edge of the wilderness. And that same spirit animates us now. Our farmers who till the fields do not rest from their labor, neither do our ranchers and our livestock farmers who care for their herds and flock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Obviously, neither do the moms and dads who rely upon our industry, American ag, to see their children grow safe and strong. They do not rest, and therefore neither will we. You, America's ag researchers, innovators, policymakers, and producers know all of this in your gut. I'm proud to be among you, and I'm proud to fight this fight for the most American of industries by your side. Thank you all so much. God bless. I'm sorry I'm not there, but I will be in person next year. God bless you all. Thank you.
All right, you covered a lot of ground, so I'm sure we can find some good questions to ask you. But I'm reminded that, you pointed out that you've been on the job a little over 2 weeks, and I know this to be true because within 8 hours of your confirmation, I was called into your office to talk about very important issues in a briefing. So that's true. But I want to back up even a little bit further, and we talk about the process of confirmation, the role of the Senate in advise and consent, and I watched, obviously, because I want to know what the boss is going to be find important. You covered a lot of ground, but you came out of the committee also with all positive votes, a clean slate coming out of the committee. So tell us a little bit about, you covered a lot of ground. Tell us about your experience and tell us about that process and what you took away from it.
It was interesting. I may be the only person ever in the history of ever that will say this. I actually loved my confirmation process. I wasn't expecting to. I had been told it was going to be hard, and it wasn't easy. I mean, it was a long, sometimes complicated, every now and then sticky process. But for me, the opportunity to sit down with the 23 members of the Ag Committee, guided with such a lovely, caring, graceful hand by Chairman Bozeman from Arkansas. Obviously, the Republicans were awesome. I mean, I had known and worked with a lot of them for a long time. The newer guys like Jim Justice from West Virginia, Coach Tuberville. I mean, it was great. But for me, perhaps the surprising part was how much I was encouraged by my conversations with the Democrats on the committee. And it's no surprise to anyone listening in either live or on Zoom to this comment right now. I have been as a conservative think tank leader in Texas. I was Rick Perry's policy director when he was governor a long time ago. I ran President Trump's domestic policy agenda. I built the think tank around Trump won that policy. I've been very close to President Trump. I've been a face of the America First movement now for almost 10 years. And so I didn't know what to expect, right? I mean, I'm walking into some of these meetings with some of the senators on the other side of the aisle, but I think they knew. And within a few minutes of sitting down, my approach was, let's figure out what we can agree on and where we can collaborate and what we can do to serve the American people. And for me, most importantly now, the American farmers and ranchers. And when we don't agree, let's disagree respectfully. And but let's figure out where we can agree. And all of those meetings, I met with every single one of the senators on the Democratic committee. I'm sorry, on the Ag Committee that were Democrats, obviously the Republicans as well. I kept in touch with all of them. I think I followed up on all of their questions. I treated the process really intentionally, and I meant it. And one of the things that Ronald Reagan said years and years ago was, find the people you disagree with and go figure out how to find something that you can agree on. And the thing is, with agriculture, everyone everyone in all of these states agrees that that it is paramount that we have a robust, thriving ag community. And so when I was voted out, somewhat surprisingly, I think to everyone, unanimously out of committee, for me, it was a really special moment. And I spoke with Ms. Klobuchar, who was really great through the process. She's obviously the ranking member with Senator Bozeman, and it was a real team effort. I think it's important now to understand, though, the implications of really trying to work together as we try to get a farm bill done this year, as we're working to move this aid out, as we potentially have, some tariff repercussions that require some more making whole, like Sonny Perdue did in the last trade negotiation. So there's a lot of really important things, and we need everyone working together and rowing the boat for our community right now.
And you talk to folks in D.C., but you also got to go out and talk to folks in the field. Now, I got a little bit of your schedule here, but which I'm very surprised about because, I've already been in 2 briefings with you, so I feel like you're in D.C., but you're not. You're out in the countryside as well, too. You're doing both. So you want to give us a little bit? You're at a livestock show in Texas yesterday. Tell us a little bit more about what you got on your plate so we can keep an eye on you.
Yeah, well, I think today is exactly 2 weeks. It does in some ways feel like it's been a lot longer than that because I've been in 4 or 5 states, visited with over, I think at this point, about 150 farmers and ranchers, specifically through roundtables or one-on-one. I've obviously been in DC quite a bit. I think, Seth, I was so impressed with you and the team. You guys were the very first. I was voted around noon on Thursday 2 weeks ago, yesterday 2 weeks ago. Then it's an interesting process. You have to wait for the paperwork to get over to the president in the Oval Office. And this is for all the cabinet members. I don't think I even knew this, and I worked in the last White House. So the paperwork takes about 2 hours, roughly, to get over to the president in the White House. And clearly he's doing a lot of other things too. So then you kind of wait for the paperwork to get signed. Then you have to be sworn in. So we're kind of moving around Washington, waiting for the paperwork to be signed. And one of my all-time heroes, Justice Clarence Thomas, agreed to swear me in with my family standing by my side. So then we went over to the Supreme Court. And by the time we left the Supreme Court and that swearing in, it was around 4, maybe 4:30. We immediately went to USDA, had a beautiful greeting from some of the key staff, our incredible acting secretary who met me there too. He was just amazing. And then Seth, I walked right into a briefing with you and others on the avian flu. That was almost immediately. So I am a policy person at heart. I am a champion and a fierce warrior for whatever it is that, whatever job I have been given, which now is this job. And so it was really important to me to dig way down into the policy. So then the next morning, I had a couple other meetings, went over to the White House, and then headed to Kentucky. And then that Sunday, headed to Kansas, and then headed to Missouri, headed to Denver, as I mentioned, on Sunday, Georgia next week. We are out across the country, but I'm kind of in and out of Washington almost every day as well. So I hope that at the end of 4 years, we will have made some significant and amazing changes for our community, and our farmers and ranchers and our rural communities will be able to feel that. But I feel certain that that is not certain. We're going to do our best, right? Only God knows. But I do feel certain that no one will outwork me, and in so doing, hopefully, we'll be able to do a lot of good.
All right. And we had a great first day. We had a really fantastic first day. Talked about a lot of issues. Governor Pillen kind of put a nice end cap on the day. And I think a lot of what came out was important. How is important the growth of the U.S. farm productivity is to the sector and to the nation. So I want to throw that back to you. And again, Governor Pillen set us up, and we've been talking about productivity all day yesterday. So why don't you give us some of your thoughts on that?
It is really remarkable when you look at, and I know I don't want to repeat anything the governor said or a lot of your experts who know a lot more than I do about this right now, but in my mom's lifetime, total farm output has nearly tripled, while total input has declined with land and labor. In my lifetime, the pounds of feed a dairy cow needs to eat and produce 100 pounds of milk has decreased by more than 40%. Meanwhile, the stewardship of our land decreased by 50%. I mean, these are amazing, amazing statistics. Meanwhile, American consumers spend roughly 10% of their disposable income on food, the lowest in the world ever. It's just one thing, one data point after another data point after another data point. We'll probably talk a little bit about labor, and I'm guessing you all have. I know that has gone up significantly for a lot of our industry. But the productivity piece is astounding, and I think that it's only the beginning. And I think where we're going is really, really exciting. We've got to get the economics worked out and ensure that those that are out there working the land and raising the animals are able to make a living. But that's what we're going to be focusing on. But the productivity piece is just astounding. So being a part of this industry in my new role, I really look forward to continuing and supporting that innovation moving forward.
Well, I noticed that you brought up farm labor, and I know in that your confirmation hearing in the Senate, you covered a lot of ground, but I remember that also coming up in there. So tell us a little bit about what you're hearing with all your extensive trips out into the field, what you're hearing from farmers regarding ag labor issues.
It's funny. I am in almost every scenario, no matter what the lane is, whether it's dairy or beef or corn or sorghum, whatever it is, labor always comes up. And I'm always asking, what's your top issue? What's your second issue? How do we fix it? What are the solutions? How does USDA, become more of a servant to you? How do we serve you? And in almost every conversation, every single one, labor comes up. So it's clearly a top issue. I know I was reading, I want to find this here because it's really, really important. Oh, just this week in front of the Senate, and this may have been yesterday or the day before, that, for example, the International Fresh Produce Association, probably have some of them there with you today, which represents 28 billion annually in U.S. agriculture output. Their labor costs now make up 50% of their expenses. According to our Northwest Horticulture Council, over the last 10 years, the labor cost to produce a bin of apples has doubled from $84 to $191 a bin. Labor representing 30% of their costs in 2013, now 70% of their costs just under 10 years later. And of course, I know the entire industry is talking about, President Trump's promise, which I fully support, of securing the border and mass deportation. When we left 4 years ago, and I'm not here to get political, and I don't think anyone in the room really wants me to, but just to put this into context, our very last trip in January of 2021, so just right before the new administration was sworn in, we went to McAllen, Texas, and there weren't many of us left in the White House then. Most people had off-ramped, I think that's what we called it. But we wanted to do one last trip, and the president wanted to go to the border. And so we went to McAllen. We took Air Force One down there. Again, just a few of us were with him. And we walked along where the wall at that point of the border had been built. And border crossings in 4 years had decreased 92% in that major stretch of Texas. I say that because I think we all know, and perhaps, a lot may agree to disagree on this, but the last 4 years and the opening of our borders has been devastating in many ways. And we don't know if that's 10 million, 15 million, 20 million illegal aliens that are here. Having said that, I realize a lot of our ag community is very concerned about labor and what President Trump's vision and now execution of that vision very quickly will mean. And my message is that, listen, he understands the challenges to our community. No one has the backs of our farmers and ranchers more than he does. We will take this one day at a time, and I'll be there. I'll be there to advocate and make sure that views are being heard. I know that the H2A is very helpful and important to many of our producers, but to many, like the dairy industry, you can't milk a cow 6 months a year. So I've already begun speaking with Lori Chavez-DeRemer, who will be our new labor secretary if voted very soon, and working with Congress on that too.
Great.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, great. Please, because I got more questions for you. So take the drink that you need. All right. So we've had lots of conversations in the room yesterday, last evening, even early this morning. And so, one of the conversations that comes up again that I think we'd like you to tell us about is, there are people in this room that definitely have concerns about trade. So, how do you, as the Secretary of Agriculture, how do you plan to approach this tariff discussion amongst your peers?
Yes, and I think that's with a massive room full of people there with you, Seth. I think that's important, and I will keep saying it over and over again, media and otherwise. The president believes very sincerely, and I believe him too, and I trust him on this, that tariffs are a really important part of his toolkit to really make America great again and to unleash prosperity the way we saw it in term one, the lowest poverty rates, the highest job rates, obviously till COVID hit, that our country had on record. And there's a reason for that. Policy matters. Less government matters. Deregulating and opening up avenues of entrepreneurship and growth and jobs, it matters. And we saw the American dream reach corners of this country in the Trump administration, the last Trump administration, that had never experienced that before. And I lived it. I was there year 2, year 3, and year 4. We made a really big effort to get into our more urban areas across the country, focusing on our significantly and generationally disadvantaged communities. Now excited to take that same model of rural America. But having said that, the tariffs are a really important part of this, and the president's vision is that they be extremely, extremely successful in doing just that. Now, no doubt that often the immediate hit and repercussion is our farming and ranching communities. And the president understands that. We've talked about it at length. He always says, Brooke, remind the farmers and ranchers got their back, and that we will ensure that, we're finished in 4 years, that they will have reached new levels of prosperity based on this immediate need to implement a change in policy approach with our world partners. So that's sort of the front end, I think, of this, that I will work and have already begun to work really hard to be part of those discussions. I think historically, as those discussions have moved on, that the Ag Secretary hasn't always been as involved on the front end, but my hope and commitment is that I will be in the room. But then on the back end, just as the president did with Secretary Perdue 4 or 5 years ago, 5 or 6 now, ensuring that we can make whole any immediate pain that is a result of that. So that is my commitment. We're 2 weeks on the job. I've been briefed up on trade pretty significantly. I've had a lot of conversations already with fellow cabinet members, with the White House and others, and will remain ever vigilant to ensure that our interests are at the table and then eventually are protected.
All right. Madam Secretary, the last question is totally a plant by your staff, who asks me, do you have any plans to sleep? You don't have to answer that question, because I think it's totally a plant that they can't keep up with you. So I don't think you have to answer that question. I think they have to answer the question if they can keep up with you. So with that, I thank you, Secretary, for making I know you wanted to be here. This is the second best solution. We were happy to accommodate your request, very much so. So thank you. Can we give the Secretary a round of applause, please?
Thank you, everybody. Seth, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
God bless everyone. Thank you. Have a great day. Great weekend. Bye-bye.